Well, let's explore this a little further with Chris Southworth, the Secretary-General of the International Chamber of Commerce in the UK. Chris, welcome. Higher costs, obviously a headache for small businesses, but it sounds as though a confusion over how this rule is going to be implemented could be an even bigger problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, de minimis is a very technical term to the average person, but basically what it is a global agreement to not tax small business and small e-commerce trade under $800. And all countries are agreed on that, and that's all about promoting global e-commerce and trying not to add barriers for small companies and consumers. And so this is a big change. The US is obviously going it alone and now imposing tariffs and costs on those key categories, and that will have a huge impact on US consumers in the first instance, but also any SME, small companies operating and trading with the US. It will just, all it will do is increase costs. We saw this with the UK and Europe when the UK left Europe. There were lots of small companies who were, importing goods, adding value, and then exporting those goods into the EU, and a lot of those went out of business because the whole business model went became unviable, and that's quite likely going to be one of the impacts that we're going to see with the US as well.
How quickly could US shoppers start to feel the impact of this, not just in terms of price, as you've explained, but also in terms of choice of product?
Well, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the products that we all buy as consumers, we know the platforms, whether it's Etsy or Temu or Amazon or ASOS or eBay, a lot of that, core business to a consumer that's just buying and selling products that we all need. That all operates on a system that includes, the de minimis. They can move things around at a small level without imposing tax and customs duties. The US is now imposing those. So anybody who's buying and selling with the US, anybody within the US who's, buying, will all feel an impact of that quite quickly, I suspect.
Mr. Trump's team might well say that these additional costs are estimated to bring in up to $13 billion in tariffs and fees. I mean, maybe you've got it all wrong. This might well be a huge benefit to the US economy.
Yeah, I mean, there is a global problem. I mean, when this first de minimis was set, this is, some time ago. This is back in 2013, before e-commerce really took off. In today's world, of course, e-commerce is enormous. China to US trade is 64 billion. China to EU trade is 5 billion. And to the UK is 3 billion. And the UK is a big part of this in terms of being the third biggest e-commerce market. We buy and sell a lot of things as consumers and also small companies on e-commerce platforms of varying different levels. And that's a real problem for governments in terms of there's a lot of trade moving at low value that are not contributing to the tax take. And of course, that's what, the likes of the US are looking at. However, from a government point of view, you're probably going to raise tax revenue. You're going to impose tax or import taxes or customs duties, and everybody has to pay. However, the impact of that is on consumers and small businesses. And as we know from the UK, that will come with an impact on your economic growth. So what they do makes a logical sense from a government point of view, but time will tell whether that has an impact on US growth. And looking at the evidence, that's almost certainly going to have a damper on US growth, but also on the global economy, because companies will rejig their supply chains, rejig where they're buying and selling, probably avoid the US if customs duties are imposed and go elsewhere, and that won't be good for the US either.
Chris, thanks for that. Chris Southworth, Secretary-General of the International Chamber of Commerce in the UK.